Welcome to my channel. Dear my audience, recently, the huge newspaper in the US called to the country should ask China to repay bonds that Chinese issued before 1949. The article of the Hill said, the United States pays interest on approximately $850 billion in debt held by the People's Republic of China. China, however, is currently in default on its sovereign debt held by American bondholders. Before 1949, the government of the Republic of China, ROC, issued a large volume of long-term sovereign gold-denominated bonds, secured by Chinese tax revenue, to private investors and governments for the construction of infrastructure and the financing of governmental activities. In 1938, during its conflict with Japan, the ROC defaulted on its sovereign debt. After the military victory of the communists, the ROC government fled to Taiwan. The People's Republic of China was eventually recognized internationally as the successor government of China. Under well-established international law, the successor government doctrine holds that the current government of China, led by the Chinese Communist Party, is responsible for repayment of the defaulted bonds. A private group of American citizens holds a large quantity of these gold-denominated bonds. This citizen-led group, the American Bondholders Foundation, ABF, serves as trustee with power of attorney for some 20,000 bondholders, whose bonds are valued at well more than $1 trillion. Then UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher started negotiation stance on the return of Hong Kong to China, led to a British settlement agreement on these same Chinese bonds in 1987. Thatcher said that for China to have access to UK capital markets, it had to honor the defaulted Chinese sovereign debt held by British subjects. Faced with that stark choice, China agreed. Unfortunately, the US failed to take such a common-sense stance. To this day, China has had access to US capital markets while openly rejecting its sovereign debt obligations to American bondholders. Lest anyone wonder about the age of these bonds, it is irrelevant. What matters is that this is a sovereign obligation. As recently as 2010, the German government made its last payment for reparations from World War I. In 2015, Great Britain made payments on bonds issuances that date from the 18th century. The Biden administration and the US Congress have a unique opportunity to enforce the well-established international rule that government must honor their debts. Like the UK did in 1987, the US must view the repayment of China's sovereign debt as essential to its national security interests. In doing so, the US government should undertake one or both of two actions currently being discussed by members of Congress. The first would be to acquire the Chinese bond held by the ABF and utilize them to offset, partially or in whole, the $850 billion plus of US Treasury owned by China, reducing up to $95 million in daily interest paid to China. This would lower the national debt and push the US in a better financial position globally. The second would be to pass legislation that requires China to abide by international norms and the rule of finance, trade, and commercial. This would include abiding by the transparency rule of capital markets and exchange and ending its practice of exclusionary settlement, selective default, and rejections of the successor government doctrines of settled international law. If China fails to meet those obligations, it would be better, together with its state to control the entities, from access to all US dollar-denominated bond markets and exchange. This, again, is just common sense and would be the very thing the Chinese government would do if the situation were reversed. Given that relations with China have deteriorated and their bipartisan agreement on the threat from China, this matter can finally be acted upon by both Congress and the Biden administrations. Getting settlement on this defaulted debt is not only right and just for the bondholders, but if done correctly, could also be a huge win for the US taxpayer. Dear my audience, above is the article on the Hughes website. Main content of the article is author want to call the US forced China to repay bonds which issued before 1949. However, I think the problem could be very difficult. Government of Chinese Communist Party did not issue the bonds. Organization issued the bond is the Republic of China. After 1949, the government of Republic of China fled to Taiwan Island, and this government still exists on the island. People Republic of China consider Taiwan as its province, but Taiwan people always say that they independent from China. From 1950, successive U.S. administration has related closely with Taiwan and always supported positively for the island. The U.S. has not recognized China's sovereignty over Taiwan. Therefore, if the U.S. government asks China repay, they will be in dilemma, because Beijing officials might say that they still have relations with Taiwan, and the administration in Taiwan is the successor of Republic of China, so they should find them for their recovery. If they want repayment from People's Republic of China, then the US must to accept that Taiwan united to China. What do you think about the problem? Please share your opinion about it. Goodbye and see you again.